A really, really dark place I was in. I remember when I had to go and do a singing gig, and I didn't have the money to put fuel in the car to get to the gig because I was spending all my money on drink and drugs and stuff like that.
What's the worst that it got?
I ended up about 5 o'clock in the morning getting in a car and driving under the influence. Police chase, crashed the car, got arrested, and that ended up with me having a 3-year ban from driving.
I almost didn't recognise you. Like, so much had changed in your speech, was slurred, you had a massive beard, you looked like a caveman.
And I remember at first we struggled with it, didn't we?
We had a bit of a fight. We went back in the boxing ring.
You are going to wake up sometimes feeling like you don't want to get up and go to work, or you don't want to get up and go for a walk, you don't want to do this. But if you get up and do those things, you change how you feel.
It always does come back to the most simplistic things in life, the most basic stuff. If we just... Dave, welcome.
Thank you, mate. How are you?
I'm good. I'll start by saying congratulations, mate. I've just watched all 3 episodes of Gallows Pole. This is your debut acting job. Directed and cast by Shane Meadows. Working alongside, veterans, let's call them what they are, like Thomas Turgoose and Michael Socker. Like, pretty awesome first job. So I just want to say well done, mate, because as someone who's known you for years... watching you do that, I was like, go on, Dave. And also, you're bloody good.
Thank you.
Who knew? Like, you are actually good, and you held your own, you played a great part. So well done, mate. I want to talk about the show, but I think a place to start is let's go before the show, because you and I have known each other quite a long time. How long do you reckon we've known each other? We've known each other through singing, right, originally?
Yeah, started off with the singing, didn't it? When did I start singing? I think I started... about 2013, something like that. As
10 years.
As a singer, yeah. And then I don't know when we first
I can't remember. Which basically means I didn't have much of an impression on you, and you didn't have one on me. But here we are, 10 years later. I think we sort of knew of each other, worked together a little bit in sort of the singing industry, as I say, and then you came to me years later when I was doing more of the coaching, the mindset coaching, and stuff like that. I think that's a place to start. Yeah. Where were you at that point when you picked up the phone and said, Matt, I need a coach?
At that stage, what I'd done really, I'd gone from being a mechanic full time, and I was fighting as well at weekends. So I was doing like kickboxing fights for money. Yeah. I was doing boxing fights for money, working on doors, and then I decided I broke a couple of ribs, and I thought I'd only got 150 quid, and I thought there's got to be a better way to sort of earn a few quid. So I knew that I had sort of a decent voice, or half decent voice, from getting up on a karaoke and people, giving me a good response.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, what about singing on a weekend? So I started going out with somebody that was already singing at a weekend and singing in between their sets, and really nervous and everything else. And then I got some of my own equipment, and I just started going around pubs and doing it. And anyway, it took off to the point where I could quit my day job. I wasn't fighting anymore, and I wasn't fixing cars. I was just doing that every weekend. But then what came with that is also a new relationship, which I'm still in now, 8 years later. But at the beginning of that relationship, unbeknownst to me, my partner was struggling with a lot of things that had happened to her as a child and through her childhood, and we ended up really in a downward spiral, I guess, of alcohol and substance abuse. And that went on for a few years into the first part of our relationship, and we really, for again, reasons unbeknownst, I mean, with me singing at a weekend, it meant I had all week off. So then I had a lot of idle time, and a lot of, I had money from the singing because I was doing quite well at it. But I also had time on my hands, and we had a lot of problems there that we didn't really address and we didn't know about. And together,
you're just constantly masking.
Together as a couple, we were just going round and round in circles. And I was drinking a lot. I was, like I said, using substances. And it was just going round in circles and not knowing how to do anything about it. You know, I was letting my kids down for the first time in my life, really.
Yeah.
I've always been a really good father, and I've always been there for my kids. And then I was finding that I wasn't turning up, and I was asking other people to pick them up for me because I was in too much of a state. And I really felt a massive shame about that, and a guilt.
Did it almost happen without realising it? Because I always think with things like that, you know, 1 or 2 nights out or whatever, you know, it's harmless. It's what most people do. And bit by bit, you know, you can start by thinking you're in control. You just maybe having a bit of fun, or maybe you've had a shit day, shit week, whatever. So let's get on it, as we say. And then before you know it, you're not in control. It's controlling you. And it's almost like, how did this happen?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it started off, like you say, maybe once a week and doing stuff like that. And then it gets a little bit more. And then by the time you know it, 3 times a week. And all you're doing in between is recovering from that.
Yeah.
And then I was getting to the point, I remember times when I had to go and do a singing gig, and I didn't have the money to put fuel in the car to get to the gig because I was spending all my money on drink and drugs and stuff like that. And I'd have to borrow the money to get the fuel in the car to go and do a singing job. And then the money I'd get paid from the singing job, I would go straight back and spend that over that weekend. And, you know, it was a really, really dark place I was in.
What's the worst that it got?
I ended up about 5 o'clock in the morning getting in a car and driving under the influence to go and pick something up. And I got a police car tried to stop me, and I ended up fleeing in the vehicle that I was in. I had a police chase, crashed the car, got arrested, and that ended up with me having a 3-year ban from driving.
I mean, just take us back to that moment, like going through that. What was that like?
It was horrendous. I mean, at the time, like I said, it seems so far away now from where I am now as a person. It's kind of like it's not me. But yeah, it was. I mean, the actual time when I did it, I put my foot down and I thought I can't stop because of what, I knew what state I was in. And then it's just a sheer panic of what do I do now? Where does this go? And like I said, in the end, I ended up crashing a car. There was nobody else involved. It was, it was just myself. But it was such. And then obviously there's the aftermath of all that. Is for the next 3 years, I had to get a bus anywhere I went. I had to ride a bicycle, and as you can imagine, when you're used to having a car and used to being able to drive and go anywhere you want in the country, basically, it's massively affected my kids, it affected my family, everybody,
Initially, though, when it had just happened, and, you say you were under the influence, when you actually started to sober up and realise what you'd done, and maybe had to tell family and things like that, take us back to that moment. What was that moment like?
It was, it's horrendous. It's horrendous. I mean, I've put my parents, my family, my partners through some horrendous things. Even as a child, I was always, I got expelled from school. Just around the time when I was about to take my GCSEs, I was very lost, I think. Didn't really know who I was. Didn't really know much about life in general, just how to deal with your emotions and how to, certain things like that just didn't come naturally to me. And yeah, it was, like I said, I got expelled from school. A massive turning point for me was at 16, walking into a boxing gym for the first time. I was always... At school, I didn't fit in, didn't have any friends, really. I had to hang around on my own at
Why
dinner
was
time.
that?
I don't know. I found it really hard to fit in. All I wanted was to fit in. So maybe trying too hard.
Right.
Not being very socially awkward. And I don't know why that is. I just was. I used to be very good at like sports. So I was very good at football, very good. So then I would show off about that because I thought that would gain me popularity and stuff. And it did the opposite. So it was like I could never quite find the balance of just being yourself, really, just being you. I was always trying to impress or trying to,
I think that's common for a lot of people, and especially in your younger years. You're always trying to fit in. You're always trying to find who you is. And I think that's the thing for a lot of teenagers, young kids. They don't actually know who that is. And for some of us as adults, we're still constantly trying to figure that out. But I think like it comes down to not trying to be something to someone else. I think that's the start. And I think as soon as you're wearing different masks or trying to be the popular one, trying to be the cool one, whatever, you're not doing it for you. You're trying to be something for someone else, and that's always going to lead you to a place of not feeling authentic.
Yeah, exactly. And I had a problem with school in general. I think the authority side of it, the teachers. I always believe that respect, it should be earned, and it should be a two-way thing. And I always found, like with me personally, teachers always wanted to beat me into submission, sort of thing, rather than trying to communicate with me and understand why I was the way I was. And it just didn't work with me. You know what I mean?
Interesting. Like I remember when we first met, and obviously you were singing and regularly performing. You was doing quite well. And in those early days when I first sort of knew you, I just thought you're just a really laid back, easygoing guy. A really professional, polite, nice person. That's just really genuine and is dead authentic and dead comfortable in your skin. Like you don't try, like a lot of performers, they're like loud and hey, look at me, and it was just Dave's just Dave, man. Like, and he's not trying to put on an act or be somebody that he's not. Fast forward then to that first coaching call that you and I had on Zoom. Immediately as you came on camera, I almost didn't recognize you. Like so much had changed in your speech, like was slurred. You had a massive beard, you looked like a caveman. What was going on right in that moment when we started working together?
So that was, I'd gone through that sort of transition of not knowing where I fit in and not knowing who I was. And like I, walked into a boxing gym at 16 and I found there, you had to show respect.
Yeah.
And if you didn't, you found out very quickly. Do you know what I mean? Everybody was on a level. Nobody talked down to me. Nobody, disrespected me or anything. But if you walked in there and you were in a ring with somebody, like there was some world champion Thai boxers, professional boxers there, and if you were disrespectful or you had a chip on your shoulder,
you're going to get humbled.
You got humbled real quick. And you couldn't say, can we stop now? You couldn't say, can you take it easy on me, please? Because you look like an idiot for saying that, or you can't get out of the ring. You just have to take it. So you learn very quickly that you have to be respectful. And I also learned massively about discipline, because I'm so competitive on a massive level, and to get good at anything, but boxing in particular, you have to have discipline, and you have to do repetitive time and time again, and listen to people and learn from them. And then when I went into the singing, I learned that you have to stand on a stage and not be so bothered about other people's opinion or other people. I don't know. It's hard.
You're gonna get shit nights, some nights. Yeah. Again, it's quite humbling because you have to earn your place to be there. You got to work on your craft. You got to go through the bad nights, and actually, the bad nights teach you the most about how to get better and better. But equally, you're still not going to be everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay, right?
Exactly. So that's probably where, like you said, when we met and you thought that I was really comfortable in my own skin and I was just me, that's probably why, because I'd done 10 years of fighting and boxing, and then I've done, so many years of being on a stage and performing, and I'd learned about myself, and I that as a massive growth for me. But then when we skipped to that point where we had that first call, I was just in a totally different space where I was diagnosed as depressed with the doctors, but I found out, realized quite quickly, especially through speaking to yourself, that it wasn't a depression. It was just that I was up 1 minute and then I was down the next. I was never on a level.
Yeah.
I was either up here because
Major
I was
extremes.
drinking and doing other things, or then I was down here because I was depressed because of the come down.
Yeah.
And then, you'd have a couple of days like that and then you'd be back up. And that was... And it was such a strange thing, because I just didn't know how. I couldn't see any end to it. I genuinely didn't know how to get out of it, and I would always think, I'll have a bottle of wine or something with the missus and that, and that, but we'll just do that tonight. And then you end up getting, it's just a circle. You just have another bottle of wine, then another one. I'd never know when to stop. I was always, and that's quite with me in every aspect. I've always carried on being quite greedy with things like alcohol. And yeah, I remember that first call. I was actually at my dad's house in like a makeshift gym, what we got set up in there. And yeah, I had a massive beard, I had a ponytail, I was overweight. I was just in such a bad place.
I remember you cried in that call.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And it was the thought of your children.
Because my kids had seen me from being little fighting in a ring and being this like almost superhero kind of guy. I was very, like I said, I was talented at sport. I was physically very good at stuff like that. And the way that they looked up to me and the way that I was always there for them and stuff like that, and it hit me massively that I'd become the opposite of that.
Yeah,
I'd become not at all a superhero. I was actually letting them down. I was making excuses as to why I couldn't pick them up, and I was overweight and I was unfit, and and looked a mess. Looked like I was homeless. And this I very nearly was at certain points because of what I was doing.
Let's talk about the process of overcoming that, because I think if anybody's listening to this now that's maybe in a similar position of where you were, and maybe they're struggling with whether it be alcohol, whether it be drugs, or whether it just be generally making bad decisions, being lost in life, what advice would you give them? What were the key things that you had to do, and sort of the work that we did together? If you reflect on that, what was the catalyst to coming out of that?
I suppose probably the first step was actually reaching out, and finding somebody that could help, because like I said, I couldn't see a way out of it. And I'm not, I'm not at all proud of anything that I've done in them years, but I do think it's important to talk about. And I do think it's who I am and it's what I did. And I have to be a big boy and put my hand up and say, I made mistakes and I did things wrong. And at that time, I could see yourself on social media, and you were putting out content, and you were being really positive, and you were, out in the morning, walking every morning, and you were doing all these things and speaking so well about mindset, and you were just really starting out, weren't you, with the life coaching?
Yeah, it was quite early days.
I genuinely thought, there's, it can't do me any harm, because look at what I'm doing now. So that I was desperate in a way to change how I was behaving, and I didn't know how to do it. And I thought maybe I'd try working with yourself and contacting you, and that might not have done a thing, and then I might have had to try something else. And I didn't know at the time. I
think that's a really good point to make, as well as different things will work for different people. So I think that's really good advice to say, just asking for help, but then also, if that first therapist, counsellor, coach, whatever, if it doesn't work, that's not, oh, well, nothing's going to work. It's not a reason to just stop. Try somebody else. Try a different method, a different approach until you find what works for you, because there will always be something. When we did work together, what would you say, reflecting on that time, what were some of the staple things that we did that obviously got you into a healthier, better mindset and sort of physically better as well?
I think the first main thing was like, I knew that if I got up in the morning and went for a walk before work or whatever, that would make me feel better. But I couldn't do it because I was so easy to just turn your alarm off, think, oh, I'm tired, I can't be bothered.
Right.
So one of the main things for me was the accountability. So straight away, one of the first things I remember you saying to me is, I want you to try getting up. What time do you get up? And say it was like 7. You'd say, right, get up at 6:30 then. Let's just make it half an hour earlier, go for a half an hour walk. And I want you to voice note me or send me a message to let me know that you're out doing that, so that I know you're doing it. And if I didn't do that, I'd have a message from you saying, why haven't you done it? And I remember at first we struggled with it, didn't we?
We had a bit of a fight. We went back in the boxing ring, metaphorically, for a few weeks, yeah.
Yeah, I remember it. And I remember you calling me out on social media and actually not mentioning my name, but I knew it was me that you were talking to.
Yeah, that was referring,
about, not working with me anymore because I wasn't doing the things that you were asking, simple things that you were asking of me, and it was a waste of time and money. And I agreed, and eventually, I got my head around it. and I started doing it regardless of how I felt. And that was one of the things, again, that you taught me. It's if you are going to wake up sometimes feeling like you don't want to get up and go to work, or you don't want to get up and go for a walk, you don't want to do this. But if you get up and do those things, you change how you feel.
Yeah.
And that was massive to me because I just didn't understand. I never realized that. I just thought you wake up and you feel rubbish, and that's your day.
And then you do rubbish shit. Yeah.
And you taught me that if you get up and you feel rubbish, but you make yourself get up and do something that's going to change that, like go for a walk, go for a jog, go to the gym, do something physical that's going to get them endorphins flowing and all that, your mindset will then change, so you will feel good. So
and listening to that, it can sound so simplistic, like feel shit, do something to change your state, then you're going to feel better. But I've found time and time again, and even now years later, the more work that I've done, the more people I've worked with, the more people I've learned from, it always does come back to the most simplistic things in life, the most basic stuff. If we just honor them and respect them and do them, they often get the biggest results. It comes back. I have a phrase that I say a lot to clients: look after the basics will look after you. If you're talking about sleep, hydration, nutrition, exercise, do that, you're going to feel so much better. But I think the key thing that coaching adds is it's that accountability, because we all know if no one else knows and nobody else cares, it's easy to let ourselves off the hook. And you let yourself off the hook 1 or 2 days, it can be all right. 3 or 4 days, and then that's when the spiral starts. And I think when I think about those first few weeks, you really did resist a lot of it. And then it was like something just clicked. And there was the realization that actually, if I don't do this, what's going to happen to my children? Like, the consequences were too big. And I think sometimes people have to go through a bit of a process, and that's okay. And I don't want to, you shouldn't demonize that, say, well, I've tried 3 or 4 times and I've failed, so I'm a failure. You're a great classic example of, first few times you didn't do it right. And you did push back. And then you did probably sometimes think, fuck you, Matt, I'm not doing it. You're shit. I'm not interested. But you kept on coming back. And then eventually there was that moment where you went, it's working now. And actually, the voice notes and so on with you became videos. I used to get fucking video diaries every morning. Matt, I'm out on the field. Look at what a beautiful day it is. And you became this really positive person who started just appreciating little things like nature and the sunrise. How was that?
It was amazing, from being in such a dark place and feeling so ashamed of who I've become and like I said, embarrassed and all those sort of horrible negative feelings, to then seeing that there is a way to change your mindset and to change your habits, or you change your small actions, and then they become a habit, and then you can build it from there, and just getting an understanding of how your mind works. I mean, we worked on all sorts, from relationship to business advice. We worked on every aspect of life, really, and it all massively helped. I mean, just again, simple things that other people might take for granted. I just didn't know. You don't teach these things in schools. They're teaching you how to work in a factory, basically, aren't they? And how to clock in and clock out and do this. And it's, for me, just learning those basic skills of, like, for example, when you're if you're in an argument, there's different ways to look at that argument, and very much I was always in the me position, where I want what I want out of that argument,
and being led by the emotion and how you felt,
being aware that when sometimes you feel a certain way, you don't necessarily have to act upon it. You can let that feeling sit for a minute, think about their point of view as well as yours, and it was the third person kind of thing, wasn't it? Looking in at that argument and looking at it from a third person and trying to react from that point of view rather than what I want or what they want, and stuff like that. So massively changed my relationship. It changed my my work life, everything.
Well, it is, because it's something that can be transferred into every area of your life. And I'll just touch upon that a bit deeper, because what you're referring to there, Dave, as you know, is something we call perceptual positions, which is like an NLP model. And ultimately, I guess the basis of what it's getting at is, there's a phrase that I say, which is, when emotion is high, logic is low. So the more emotional we are, the less logical we are. And that's what happens, right? In arguments, in rows, we always do that kind of, or we can do that thing where we look back and go, God, why did I say that? Why did I do that? I'm now in a world of shit. I shouldn't, And it's this skill of learning to almost take yourself out of yourself and look at yourself as a third person, which is what you're referring to. Almost as if you're your own counsellor, coach, therapist that's seeing it objectively. It's not about being emotionless. And it's not about only focusing on taking yourself out. You've got to feel what you feel, understand it, embrace it. But then my advice is don't take action or make decisions based on being in that place. Make decisions and take action based on looking at yourself from an outside point of view. And I know for you, like just that realization, suddenly, from your voice notes, your check-ins and our sessions, you were just starting to be more patient, more considerate, more calm. And lo and behold, everything around you starts being better. You feel better. Everyone around you's better, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like I said, my relationship became much better. I actually I wouldn't say I led the way for our relationship to be better. Obviously, my partner's done massively well, and I've got a huge respect for her. But that maybe me doing what I did helped her along her journey as well.
Completely, yeah.
And it completely changed my life. Working with you, it made my business better, made my relationship better, made my my physically I was improving again and getting back in the gym and doing all that. And without that, mate, honestly, I don't know where I would have been. And now I'm on the BBC.
Worked out all right for you?
It's a bit of a change, isn't it, from what I was doing?
Talk to me about, because obviously here in the UK especially, like I think a lot of people are like, life coaching, why do you need a life coach? And we get this a lot. A lot of people misunderstand it. I also think it's generally just a new concept. Like people in the last 10, 15 years or so have started to come around to this idea of actually asking for help, going to therapy and counselling, but then life coaching. And I also think some of it's valid that it has a bit of a bad reputation, like because there is a lot of charlatans out there. It is an unregulated industry, so you have got to be so careful who you work with and vet them and, all that kind of stuff. So I think there is an argument which is valid to say, look, not all life coaching is great, but equally, there is the other side of it where you find that right coach and genuinely, you can, it sounds a bit wanky, but change your life and start living your best life. So to any of the cynics, critics about the idea of life coaching as a whole, what would be your take on it? What would you say? Why was life coaching right for you? And what's kind of your advice on it?
I always remember a quote that you said to me, which was that counselling is great for talking about a situation and learning you how to live with that bad situation,
be more at peace with
this shit situation. Whereas life coaching was taking that shit situation and giving you steps to move away from that shit situation. And that always stuck for me, and it was true. It was like, you're not just going to sit there and go, okay, well, it's all right. You don't have to. It was not. You were brutally honest with me in some cases that I was, not being a good father, and you used some really choice words.
Putting it mildly.
And you know what, I needed that. But
and just to say as well, because I think it's important that I do say, is how you work with every client is going to be different. So it was about understanding the words that work for you. It's about understanding what emotively would drive you to make a change. And like, we quite like a swear from now and then, don't we, Dave? So that's obviously why there's other clients I won't be swearing at them, because it's not going to work for them, and it's going to actually do the opposite and think, So that's the important thing.
It is all obviously, from your side of things, from being the coach. It is. I understand it's totally packaged to the individual. There is a lot of people out there that you would avoid, or that it is a very difficult field, and you've got to obviously be able to do it to what you can afford as well, because you're obviously paying for a service, and if that's going to put you into financial burden, then it might not be right for you. But you can also look on YouTube and look on the internet and search things about mindset and life coaching, and you can probably find a lot about it for free.
Oh God, yeah, so much for free.
But yeah, if you can afford it and you can find somebody that works well with you and that's right for you, I think it's really, it's an absolute game changer, and it massively changed my life. So thank you for everything that you've done for me.
Bless you, man. And
genuinely.
In your and it was a pleasure, because you're one of those examples of somebody who, even though the first few weeks were pretty rocky, like, you did respect me enough and yourself enough to kind of go, I'm going to do this, yeah, and I'm not just going to do it as a bit of a half-hearted, like, you fully threw yourself into it. And the thing I always say is, as a coach, and I'm not a parent, but it's kind of how I imagine being a father to be, is you're only as good as them. Like, I'm only as good as my client. Like, you can give the best advice, the best support, the best suggestion, but ultimately it's down to the kid. The kid's going to grow up to be the kid that it is, and it's the same working with a client. Like, I can give you whatever, but if you don't take action on it and you don't show up, nothing's going to change, so that's massive credit to you, mate. And as you say, now BBC, like, absolutely at the beginning of a really exciting journey as an actor now. For people that are maybe watching you like, oh my God, I've been acting for 30 years, I've never had that breakthrough role, and they see you, who just seemingly strolls in, lands an amazing job, an amazing part with an amazing team. Tell us a little bit about your career, because I know it's been varied, and it hasn't been filled with just fucking one thing after another. There's been a lot of rejection as well. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, there's been so much. I mean, it is easy to look at what I've done and go, he's just gone and walked straight into it, like you say. But I started off, as a singer. I just started singing, and I think it was 2014, the Jack Pack finished second on Britain's Got Talent. And I got a phone call from their manager. They got a record deal with Simon Cowell, and they had to let one of their members go. So they asked me if they'd found me on the internet. They said, would you like to come and audition to be in the band to record the album with Simon Cowell? I was like, yep, 100%. So I went to London, did the audition, got a call back a second time, went back again, and I thought, this is me, this is it. And I didn't get it. I didn't get that job, and it was like, real massive hit for me, personally, mentally, and everything. But I didn't give up, I didn't think, well, I'm not good enough to sing or whatever. I carried on singing as a solo artist, and then went and did 7 or 8 years as a solo artist.
And you did modelling. And I also remember, it's probably about 7 years ago, I remember you getting in touch with me because you had a Hollyoaks audition years ago.
Yeah.
And I remember you saying, Matt, like, this is all a bit new to me. Can you give me some advice? This is a script. Like, that was years and years ago. And obviously you didn't get that job.
Yeah. So this is it. This is what people don't see. I've always been interested in acting, but never really known how to get into it.
Yeah.
The modelling, again, it's a very similar story to like with the Jack Pack. So the modelling, I had some photos done to promote the singing, and I thought, somebody said, oh, you could maybe be a model. So I thought, okay. So I sent some photos off to some of the biggest agencies in London and Manchester, and they all came back and said, no, you're not good enough, you're not what we're looking for, you're not the right look, whatever. But it's how you react to it, and this is like before all the stuff that happened before we started coaching together. This was before all that. I obviously, at some stage before we started coaching, I've always had a resilience and a self-belief that's been quite unwavering. Like,
where do you think that comes from?
I have no idea. I don't know if it's
when you say always, you were saying at school,
from being a child,
it was there,
just
even when you felt you didn't fit in.
Not in like a social situation,
right.
But I always believed from being a young child that I would do something that people would know me for.
Really?
And I didn't know if that was a footballer, a professional dancer, or a singer, or anything. I always thought that I would be something that somebody would know about. People would know who I was.
Do you think that's a personality thing you're born with, or do you think it's maybe parenting, what they instilled in you? Where do you think, if you reflect on that comes from? And the reason I ask is because a lot of people don't have that. A lot of people, what I've learned time and time again through doing this podcast and coaching people, is self-belief is at the core of those who go on to achieve stuff. But yet most people, imposter syndrome, self-doubt, not good enough, comparing, it's the main thing that holds most people back. Where did it come from?
I don't actually know where it came from. I couldn't really tell you. on a psychology level. But I mean, that self-doubt and that imposter syndrome and all that's still there.
Yeah,
But
right.
underlying beneath all that is a self-belief that is just never gone away. And I remember as a kid, I always used to watch. I loved, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Steven Seagal, all that, Arnold Schwarzenegger and all that. But the main two people that I used to watch on VHS all the time was Muhammad Ali and Bruce Lee. And I don't, if it came from that,
Maybe being
it could have
influenced by
done-
their
Yeah,
mindset.
but I always remember. Muhammad Ali was just so. I mean, he was going in and fighting against somebody who'd beaten up the people that had beaten him, and beaten them badly. And he was going in there saying, "I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that," and and that confidence and it almost like bullshitting himself into winning fights because he shouldn't have won certain fights, and he shouldn't. But he believed it that much that it became true. And Bruce Lee, just like how he used to speak about be like water, water can fit into any container and yet it can break through rock and blah, blah, blah.
And it flows.
You can believe, you can be anything that you want to be if you put your mind to it.
Yeah.
And I always kept that and that always stayed with me. And like we said, when we go back to like the modeling and stuff like that, it was like I got no from every like modeling agency that I contacted. But then I went and I gave myself 9 weeks of diet and training and got myself a nutritionist and a gym coach. And I went and trained my arse off and had another photo shoot. And then I got a modeling contract. Do you know what I mean? And that's...
Didn't take that rejection and just go on your pity potty.
Exactly.
You used it as fuel to go again, get
and
better.
This is it. Yeah, you it's very easy to take these no's and go, I'm not good enough, and that's it. I mean, I went on the X Factor. I tried that, and this sounds it's a crazy like life. It wasn't so much, and it's not about being famous either. It's not that I just want to be famous. I wanted to be successful. For whatever reason, like I say, it doesn't really matter what the thing was. And I went on the X Factor and I got a no from them. I got through like first stage or whatever it is, and then you go back another day, and then I got a no from them. And I didn't like that whole process of how they did everything and all that, and it was all a bit fake and everything. So, but I still became a professional singer. I still did that for a living. The Jackpack thing, I got a no from them. 8 years later, they phoned me up and said, right, we're doing a lot of cruise ship work and we're doing a lot of award ceremonies and stuff like that. Would you be interested in auditioning again? Because we've got different members that have just had children and stuff. And I went and, for the last 6 months, I was working on cruise ships with Jackpack. So because they said no to me 8 years ago, I wasn't ready then. Do you know what I mean? And I did 8 years of going around pubs and clubs and casinos on my own with nobody to help me, and just sang and just performed and learnt my craft to the point that then 8 years on, when the opportunity came back, I was absolutely right for them.
I think that's so important. I think today there's such a tendency for this whole kind of overnight success thing to look exciting. There's always somebody trying to package a course online or whatever on how overnight you can have it smashed. X Factor's done that to a lot of people. We watched that show for however many weeks. From the beginning, they're literally quote-unquote nobodies. At the end, they're superstars. So everybody now has got this false perception of the reality. And actually... 99% of people who we see up there on the screen have done exactly what you've done. They've put in the reps over the years and years and years of becoming good enough. And I think something else, talk about that subject of self-belief and confidence. I think what you said there is actually focusing on the action of just looking at what you can control and not what you can't. What you can control is I can still go to a different agent, or I can go to the gym and get fitter, or whatever. It's focusing on action, and I think that action creates momentum, and that momentum is what breeds belief. And I think that's something that seems really evident listening to you, that's been part of your journey. Talk to me about Gallows Pole, because here we are. That show at the time of recording has just recently aired. I loved it. Obviously, we've got the episode. If you haven't already, check it out with yourself, Thomas, and Michael from the show, which was, we talked a lot more about the show on that episode than we have on this. But just give us a brief kind of overview in terms of, for you, first big job, but it's working with people who've been established for decades now. What's the main things you learned from that, and how was that?
I mean, it was an incredible experience. But again, just to say to people about that, without realizing it, I've fought for 10 years in a boxing ring in front of a crowd.
Yeah.
I've sang on a stage for 8 years prior to this in front of a crowd. And without realizing it, obviously I wasn't training to get an audition with Shane Meadows, but
You kind of was.
without realizing it, that's exactly what's happened. So people don't see all those years of doing those different things have worked out that when it came to be in an audition room and Shane Meadows is there and they've got cameras on me and they're saying, right, go on, do the improvise and just action. I could do that without fear or without being nervous and what have you. Whereas, if I hadn't have done any of those previous things, I would have probably lost, I wouldn't have been nowhere near as calm, nowhere near as confident.
It's all valid experiences.
And
that
this
are
is what
shaping
I'm saying. It's not just people think that I've just sent a video off and got a job on the BBC, and it's not that at all, I'm not saying that I've purposefully done the things that I've done in life to be able to do what I've done now, but the things that I've done in life have obviously led to that, and that's what, there's a massive of going out there and working hard,
having patience as well, and not quitting. I think a lot of people are so led by, I'm not getting results, so I need to quit, or I've been doing this for a couple of years now, I need to quit. Like you were going for years and years, like you say, performing, boxing, all that kind of stuff, and eventually stuff's just started happening for you literally now.
Just
at this
now,
stage.
37. So it's, there's a great thing what Denzel Washington says about everybody at some point is going to be embarrassed. They're going to fail. They're going to make themselves look stupid and all that. So many people are afraid to do something because they fear failure. They fear falling down. I've been so many times I've stood on a stage and I've forgot words, or I've sang it and there's something's happened in my throat and my voice has gone all funny.
That's me every gig when I perform. It's not a one-off thing. That's how I perform.
But so many people, I feel, are just so scared of embarrassment and failure that they don't try. And then obviously, where does that get you? Not trying, you fail anyway. So do you know what I mean? There's no harm in failing, and keep. He also said, and I like Denzel Washington, by the way. He said, fall down 7 times, you get up 8. You know, and it's just keep that not being afraid to make yourself look stupid, not being afraid to to fail, and that persistence and keep going and keep doing it is what gets you there. But the Gallows Pole, it was incredible experience to do. I absolutely loved it. And being in front of all those people like Michael Socker, Thomas Turgoose, Adam Fogarty, Sophie McShearer. There's so many amazing people in it.
Yeah.
And they were all amazing. You know what I mean? They were all really good because there was not just me that was a first-time actor. There was others as well, and they were really welcoming. They really made you feel comfortable. And Shane himself, Shane's an incredible human being. He really is, and he's a joy to be around. He's so positive when you're around him. I've never really heard him say. He might be like different when I'm not there. Doors, whenever I've been there, he's been so positive and so encouraging. And it was amazing.
I'm just so proud of you. Like, it's unbelievable to see where you were a matter of years ago to where you are today. And I just want to and I know I said it at the beginning, but genuinely, I want to congratulate you. I want to acknowledge you. And I want to say thank you for coming on here today and being so vulnerable and sharing this, because I know some of the things you've spoke about are not easy. But I really hope in doing that, if just one listener of this episode, if it just gives them that courage to take that first step, to change their own life or whatever it may be, then I hope you feel it's been worthwhile sharing that kind of stuff. So thank you for that, man. Just before we finish, last few questions are kind of the questions that I ask all our guests around life, around success. So the first question is, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received and why? And is it from Denzel Washington by any chance? Come on, Denzel. Let's hear another.
Denzel's got some bangers,
Bangers.
He once said, "You hang around."
It is Denzel. We're going with Denzel.
We'll go with Denzel. Why not?
Go on.
He once said, "You hang around a barbershop long enough, and sooner or later you're going to get a haircut."
Yeah.
And and again, it's just so true.
I need to go to a barber's, actually. You've just reminded me. Cheers for that, man. I need a cap on like you today.
You know, there's certain things like that I look at, you know,
who you're around,
I listen to, and it's the same.
environment.
There's an Arnold Schwarzenegger documentary out on Netflix now. Watch that. It's incredible to hear about how he talks about his visualizing himself on that stage and winning them trophies and all that.
Is it like a
and then made it
series they've
happen.
just released? A few episodes. Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, and it's great because without realizing, you start to put these dots together, and you see these people like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, Denzel Washington, and when you look into them or you start to watch a few things about them, you realize they're very similar characteristics about them, about not giving up and about believing and visualizing yourself, and you know, it's incredible. But yeah, best piece of advice. It's difficult.
I think that's good. Like,
I would say that
what you're
one.
saying
I
with
love
that
one.
in a way is like, be mindful of the environment you're in. Like, who are you around? Who are you listening to? What's their energy? What's their vibe? It's absolutely huge. So I think that's great advice. What about the flip side then? What's some of the worst advice you've received in your life, and why? And don't say anything. Don't say anything I said, because it'll just get edited out. Waste of time.
I mean, it always makes me laugh when people say there's no such word as can't, and I think, well, there is a word as can't, and I mean, I know it's not what you're talking about, but that kind of is always a strange one for me. I think there is I get what they're trying to say, but it doesn't make sense. There is a word as can't, and it does exist. Do you know what I mean? And there is.
Well, I think what you're referring to there, well, my interpretation of it is it's that thing of not being delusional. Like, yes, there's a certain level of self-belief you've got to have, but you've also got to recognise, you know, whether it just be, I don't know, you want to be a basketball player, but you're 4 foot. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Maybe that's not the best thing to be obsessing about. Like,
that's what I mean by that.
Self-awareness, then, isn't it? Like knowing your strengths and weaknesses and playing into that.
Yeah, there's one thing having a can-do attitude and you know, being positive and all that, but to think that absolutely, you know, like, I know that I'm not going to be a singer to a level like George Michael, because my voice isn't as good as George Michael's.
Right.
But it doesn't mean I can't earn a living from being a singer, which I do, you know. So, that
that's
one
great.
I find a bit strange when people say that.
Okay, so the kind of idea behind Success School is this idea that I feel a lot of traditional education doesn't really go deep on equipping us with the stuff we need to know about life to live a successful life, you know, whether that be truly healthy, whether it be finances, or whether it just be mental health. I feel like a lot of school just ticks boxes of you need to know geography, history, maths, that kind of thing. So based on that, if we go away from the things you learnt at school and instead focus on the important things you've learnt about life, if you were almost many, many years from now on your deathbed looking back and you could just leave 3 truths, 3 lessons of like what you believe to be true about, if you do this, if you follow this, you will be successful in your life, what would those 3 lessons be that you'd give to people?
I would say on a personal level, being aware of your physical fitness, I always think is massive. I think doing anything, you know, in the gym, or whether it be football or walking, or, you know, there's something that everybody is able to do, and when you do that on a physical side, you're always going to feel better about yourself mentally anyway. You know, you're physically fit is obviously good for you. I think being kind as well is massively underrated. You know, I know it might sound a bit wanky and that, but yeah, just being kind to people, whether they are, you know, up here or down here, it doesn't matter. You know, everybody's equal.
Yeah, nice.
I'm not sure on the third one. I think it's all relative. I think that's the problem with success, is relative to each person, and like some people, you know, want to work with, you know, a regular job, and they want to spend a lot of time with their family, and they want to have a house and a car and go on holidays, and that's amazing, and they are successful.
Yeah.
And I haven't got a house that I own. You know, I rent a house, but I've always wanted to leave something behind that people can remember, you know, if that makes sense, and be a thing to my kids that you can do anything.
Yeah.
You know, like when Bruce Lee said about you can do anything that you know, if you put your mind to it. And I feel like I've sort of proved that in a way to my children.
Yeah.
I didn't come out of school. I got expelled from school. I didn't come out with any GCSEs, you know. And there was so many times people have told me, you can't do that and you can't do that. And I've ticked these boxes time and time again. I've become a professional singer. I've now just done the BBC drama, you know. And it is really a case of you don't need to be, you know, that generally educated and get a job and be or like that. You can do that if that's what makes you happy. Then
But
fine.
there's another way.
But it doesn't. It's not the be all and end all. You can make
Agreed.
something of yourself without having all that.
Dave, absolute pleasure. Just if anybody is discovering you for the first time and they want to check you out on social media and maybe see more of you and your content, where can people find you? How do they follow you?
Instagram would probably be the main one. That's Dave Perkins Official. I don't use Twitter that much, but that's Dave Perkins Real. But yeah. I think
Legend.
I'm on TikTok as well, somewhere in the ether.
Somewhere. We'll get it out on the show notes. See you doing some dance moves, I've no doubt. Final question just to finish is, what is your definition of success?
Again, I think it's relative. It's relative to the person. And for me personally, it is to be happy and be proud and being able to be proud of yourself.
Yeah.
And if you've got children, that your children, knowing that your children are proud of you, no matter what monetary situation you're in or whatever, that to me is you're successful then, because you're proud of your own achievements, and you to make your children and your family proud is all that really matters, you know. Well, you need to be able to survive, obviously, but
Probably, yeah. That's probably useful to be able to eat and
yeah. Should we do that again?
No, mate. I thought that was great. Was that your words or was that Denzel's?
That was my own
That was
words.
yours.
That was why it was so crappy.
Shall we do a re-edit and just end on Denzel? No, I'm kidding. Yeah, honestly, mate. Thank you so much. That was brilliant.
No problem. Thank you for having me.